and I took that money and I invest in real estate. Then my investments are able to support my lifestyle, and that's how I retire at the age of 27.
Online fame is a dangerous currency. It can build empires overnight, but the very foundation of those empires can be just as fragile as the screens they're built on. Just ask Dan Lok. For years, he was the undisputed Sifu of the digital guru sphere, a self-made multimillionaire who preached the gospel of high-ticket sales to millions of desperate followers. His face was everywhere. Forbes, Entrepreneur, YouTube, a symbol of rags to riches success who claimed to have failed at 13 businesses before finding the one true secret to wealth. But then, almost as quickly as he rose, he seemed to vanish. The constant stream of YouTube content slowed to a trickle. The aggressive marketing for his flagship programs went quiet. To the outside world, it looked like the satisfying downfall of another scam guru, finally buckling under the weight of his own deceit. But what if I told you that Dan Lok's disappearance wasn't a collapse? What if it was one of the most calculated and brilliant strategic retreats in the history of online business? This isn't a story of a fall. It's the anatomy of a corporate metamorphosis. Let's rewind to the peak of the Dan Lok empire, from around 2017 to 2021. This was the era of the Sifu persona. His origin story was perfectly crafted for the aspiring entrepreneur. A teenager who immigrated from Hong Kong to a bad neighborhood in Vancouver, forced to sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor. He talked about the moment his father went bankrupt, plunging his mother into hopelessness, and how he vowed then and there to become successful. He accrued $150,000 in debt, failed 13 times, a story he never let you forget, before finally cracking the code. This emotional rags-to-riches testimony was the anchor for everything he sold. It was the proof that his methods could work for anyone. And the crown jewel of his methods was the high-ticket closer program, or HTC. This wasn't just another course. It was marketed as the single most crucial skill for any entrepreneur. The promise was intoxicating. Learn this one skill and you could compress decades into days, achieving financial freedom by closing deals worth tens of thousands of dollars. The language was powerful, the testimonials were glowing, and the price tag was, well, high ticket. But here's where the first cracks started to appear. The entire business model was structurally profitable for Dan Lok, but not necessarily for his students.
I bought Dan's course.
So interesting. So you bought Dan's course, and you can go into detail, but
Yeah.
long story short, was he a scam?
So this is interesting. I mean, like, you know this, right? Like, it depends who you ask. If you ask anybody, is Tony Robbins a scam? Is Grant Cardone a scam? It really depends who you ask. For me personally, here's what I can say, and I'll be very objective, right? I'll come from a very objective point of view. Dan is a master at teaching mindset and personal development. He's a very good self-help guru. Very, very good. An awesome marketer too. So if you want to learn marketing, copy and model of Dan's stuff. But when it comes to teaching actual sales skills, not really.
Think of it as an inverted pyramid. The financial return for the Dan Lok Group came from the volume and high price of the courses themselves, not from tracking the success of the thousands of people who bought them. The system was designed to be a money-making machine, generating over $100 million in collective sales, regardless of whether the students ever recouped their investment. And recoup it, they did not. The internet began to fill with the echoes of financial disappointment. On platforms like Reddit, former students began to speak out, labeling Lok a fake entrepreneur, a fraud, and a charlatan. They claimed the programs don't work. The reality of the high-ticket closer model was often far from the glamorous promise.
So Dan Lok is he's gone through a number of iterations, but he was kind of this like sales trainer guy who really made a hard push into what he called high-ticket sales. And he was telling people that they could kind of escape the 9-to-5 rat race if they just learn high-ticket sales and they can have the life of their dreams. Basically, it's like, I'll teach you to sell, but I'll teach you to ask. Like, not only will I teach you to sell you that pen, but I'll teach you to sell it for $50,000 instead of $1, right? So I talked to a lot of the people who had taken this course because it was pretty expensive. I think it was like $2,500 or $1,000. And mind you, the people who are taking it are like teachers and like people who don't have a lot of money. And then you take the course and immediately you find out, okay, well, there's an upsell. At the end of the course, you're not ready. You need to go from like high ticket closer, which is one of the products, to inner circle or like the level up, right? And all of these courses are structured like this. So they spend a tremendous amount on Google ads to get people in the door, promising the dream. And then once you're in, you're actually not done being like the product. You're actually in this system that tries to upsell you again and again and again and again. And eventually you're paying monthly and you're getting more and more. You're constantly paying for access to Dan Lok's wisdom and like ideas. And fundamentally, this sales system wasn't working for people. I mean, I talked to like, for example, a teacher who put in like $25,000, was in debt at one point, and has nothing to show for it.
Investigative reports suggested students were given elementary sales training and then essentially funneled as 1,099 contractors into other companies within the guru ecosystem that were desperate for cheap sales talent. The promise was to become a master closer. The reality for many was becoming just another cog in a machine, with minimal success but maximum fee revenue for the program at the top. The allegations grew darker. It wasn't just that the programs might not work, it was that the man himself might be a fabrication. Journalists and industry insiders began picking apart his image. Was he really the self-made multimillionaire he claimed to be? Reports surfaced alleging he didn't actually own the luxury assets he flaunted. The penthouses, the specific Rolex watches that were so central to his success idol branding. In professional copywriting circles, he was denounced as a snake oil salesman, a great poser and actor, but not a genuine expert. Then came the knockout punch, allegations of intellectual property theft. An investigative journalist named Coffeezilla broke a story claiming that Lok's high-level Dragon 100 training course contained material stolen directly from another entrepreneur, Alex Charfen. The claim was stark. Charfen had his entire life's work stolen and resold by Dan Lok. This wasn't just a customer complaint anymore. This was a serious ethical and legal breach. A public confrontation followed, putting Lok's team on the defensive. The reputational damage was no longer just about disappointed customers. It was about documented claims of theft that introduced a whole new level of legal risk. So, by 2021, the facade was crumbling. Consumer trust was evaporating, refund requests were mounting, and serious journalists were circling. For most gurus, this is the point of no return, the satisfying downfall we all expect to see. But Dan Lok is not most gurus. What looked like a disappearance was, in fact, a meticulously planned vanishing act. His personal brand visibility plummeted. The high-frequency YouTube uploads, the constant promotion, it all slowed down. There was even a video titled, "I Quit. Dan Lok leaving YouTube is official," which was later revealed to be an April Fool's joke. But the joke was on us. It was a subtle signal, preparing his audience for the shift that was already underway. The most compelling evidence of this calculated retreat isn't found in YouTube analytics, but in dry corporate legal filings. The Dan Lok Group had secured trademarks for its educational services, but a review of the Canadian Intellectual Property Office reveals a telling status for one of these key trademarks: abandoned, withdrawn, dead. This formal, legal abandonment of the very brand identity he built his empire on occurred right around the peak of the criticism. It was a clear signal. The Dan Lok Group was legally terminating its aggressive commitment to the high-risk, unregulated world of e-learning. He wasn't running away. He was executing a pivot. So, where did he go? He migrated his entire operation from the volatile, low-barrier world of B2C coaching to the high-barrier, capital-intensive, and heavily regulated world of corporate finance. The Dan Lok of today is not a guru. He's a financier. He now operates primarily through two new entities. First, there's Dragon X Capital, LLC, a venture capital firm founded in 2022 and registered in Delaware. This is a world away from selling courses on the internet. Dragon X Capital files Form ADVS with state regulators, a mandatory disclosure for financial advisors. It invests in seed and early-stage B2B, IT, and AI companies. This is a deliberate move into a sphere that demands transparency and due diligence. The second, and more central arm, of his new empire is Dan Lok Acquisitions, or DLA. This division is focused on mergers and acquisitions, but not of startups. DLA's mission is to acquire firmly established companies. We're talking about businesses with a steady revenue of over $5 million a year, a minimum of 10 years in operation, and a proven management team. He's no longer selling the dream to aspiring entrepreneurs. He's buying the reality of successful, stable companies. This structurally shields him from the reputational fallout of launching speculative ventures. You can't accuse him of scamming people when his targets are already multi-million-dollar enterprises. But here's the most brilliant, and some might say cynical, part of the entire pivot. How does he scale these acquired companies? He leverages the very audience that nearly became his downfall. DLA's marketing openly boasts about its social capital. What is that social capital? The 2.4 million YouTube subscribers, the 1.7 million fans, the 1.5 million followers, the entire digital army he amassed during the guru era. Let that sink in. The controversial audience, the source of his reputational crisis, has been converted into his primary corporate asset. He is no longer personally selling courses to this audience. Instead, his corporate entity, Dan Lok Acquisitions, is now selling access to this audience to the established, successful businesses he buys. The promise to a potential seller is, "Sell us your company, and we will instantly put your brand in front of millions of potential customers." The toxic personal Sifu brand has been surgically separated from the immense digital reach. The liability has been converted into the engine of a new, more stable, and legally compliant business model. He took the fuel from the fire that was threatening to burn his empire down, and is now using it to power a corporate jet. So, the narrative of the fall of Dan Lok is a complete misnomer. There was no satisfying downfall. There was a successful corporate metamorphosis driven by cold, hard risk management. The timeline is perfect. As allegations of IP theft and fraud reached their peak, he formally detached from his educational IP and launched his financial entities. He built a 9-figure empire on an educational product widely deemed ineffective by its consumers. When the walls started closing in, he didn't try to defend his legacy. He abandoned it. He took the fortune and the audience that legacy generated, and he leveraged it to buy himself a seat at a more respectable, more stable, and far more powerful table. The legacy of Dan Lok is a paradox for our time. It's a story that proves that in the digital age, a reputation for controversy doesn't have to be a death sentence. If you're shrewd enough, it can just be another form of capital. He hasn't fallen, he's simply upgraded. And in doing so, he's written the new playbook for how to fail upwards, without ever having to admit you were wrong.